There exists a form of intelligence that rarely enters conversation. It is absent from curricula. It is not transmitted through instruction. Yet its presence is unmistakable, felt as a subtle disturbance in the air. It does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It operates quietly, precisely, almost invisibly, like a principle rather than a personality. You may have encountered it without realizing. The individual who speaks little, yet alters the dynamics of a room. The one whose composure reshapes the emotional climate around them. Their authority does not arise from volume, but from alignment. Their words are not frequent, but when spoken, they settle deeply. This is not brilliance in the conventional sense. It is intelligence refined through restraint. Machiavelli understood this distinction. He did not admire intelligence for its elegance, but for its capacity to move reality without friction. This form of intelligence does not rush toward reaction. It observes first. It withholds judgment. It allows patterns to reveal themselves. It does not confront chaos. It studies it patiently. Its origin is not learning, but attention. At first, silence becomes deliberate. Speech becomes selective. Listening becomes primary. You notice inconsistencies. You sense emotional undercurrents beneath language. You recognize when laughter masks need, when confidence conceals fear. This is not detachment. It is clarity. As the world accelerates into no's, you decelerate into understanding. People argue to defend identity. They cling to narratives to protect fragile coherence. They speak louder, and certainty dissolves. You watch, and gradually, something changes. You no longer interpret people through intention, but through behavior. Not through self-description, but through response under pressure. A quiet truth emerges. When individuals feel secure, they become predictable. This is where awareness becomes influence. Questions are no longer asked to gather facts, but to expose structure. Silence becomes diagnostic. Discomfort becomes informative. You do not collect secrets. You observe patterns. The mind adapts. Emotion loses dominance and gains function. Anger informs boundaries. Fear signals risk. Sadness reveals attachment. Nothing is wasted. This is not cynicism. It is realism without illusion. Truth becomes contextual. Belief becomes leverage. Trust becomes architecture, not manipulation. Navigation. Language shifts from expression to precision. Words are measured. Pauses are intentional. Meaning is layered. You stop explaining yourself, not out of arrogance, but because clarity no longer requires permission. Tone becomes data. Absence becomes statement. Presence becomes calibrated. You are no longer reactive. You are responsive. To timing, to structure, to consequence. Transformation does not announce itself. It occurs quietly. Others still perceive familiarity, unaware of the internal reorientation. You did not change suddenly. You evolve incrementally. And now, force feels unnecessary. This intelligence does not dominate. It aligns outcomes. Power becomes implicit rather than imposed. This is the intelligence Machiavelli respected most. The kind that reshapes systems without appearing to challenge them. You no longer seek control. You create conditions. You are not colder. You are clearer. And clarity, sustained over time, becomes formidable. This is not an ending. It is a threshold. There is an intelligence most people never name, because naming it would force them to admit vulnerability. You won't find it taught. You won't hear it praised. But when it enters a room, something tightens. This intelligence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need approval. It watches. You've seen it before. The one who never raises their voice, yet everyone adjusts, and they speak. The one who smiles calmly, while others over-explain. They don't talk much. They don't need to, because when they speak, their words land, and don't leave. This is not charm. This is not charisma. This is threat without violence. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He didn't admire intelligence that dazzled. He admired intelligence that survived and dominated. This mind does not react. It calculates. While others rush into emotion, it waits. While others defend ego, it maps weakness. It doesn't argue. It ends arguments before they start. This intelligence begins with silence. You stop talking. You stop explaining. You stop trying to be understood. You listen long enough to hear fractures. You observe long enough to spot contradictions. People reveal everything when they feel safe. Their fears leak through sarcasm. Their hunger hides behind humor. Their insecurity screams through confidence. And while they perform, you record. The world is loud with distraction. People fight over illusions. They shout because they are losing control. You don't interrupt. You study. And then it clicks. People are predictable, uncomfortable, weak when validated, exposed when relaxed. That's when you move. You don't ask questions for answers. You ask questions to destabilize. You let silence crush them. You let their need to speak betray them. They think you're passive. You're harvesting. This intelligence doesn't rush. It accumulates. Your perception sharpens. You stop seeing people as equals. You see leverage, risk, usefulness. You anticipate betrayal before loyalty fades. You spot lies before they form. You're already 5 steps ahead. Not because you're smarter, because you're colder. Emotion no longer controls you. You control emotion. Anger becomes restraint. Fear becomes timing. Pain becomes advantage. This is the moment innocence dies. Truth becomes optional. Belief becomes weaponized. Trust becomes currency. Words are no longer communication. They are tools. You speak less, but when you do, you shift outcomes. You stop justifying yourself. You stop reacting to disrespect. Not because you forgive, but because retaliation is best served unseen. You don't confront. You remove. Doors close quietly. Access disappears without explanation. They never see it coming. You never reveal your plans. Never expose your depth. Never show full intent. You give them just enough to misjudge you. Because when people think they understand you, they stop defending. That's the mistake. You don't dominate conversations. You steer them. You don't raise your voice. You raise pressure. You don't threaten. You withdraw. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than losing access to someone they can't control. This intelligence doesn't seek power. It renders resistance irrelevant. You don't need fear. You don't need love. You need awareness. That's the third path Machiavelli never wrote about. Control without attachment. You are no longer reactive. You are strategic. You are no longer visible. You are inevitable. And they won't realize what you are until the result is already decided. This is not evolution. This is selection. And if you're hearing this clearly, you were never meant to remain ordinary. And from here, something irreversible happens. You no longer ask yourself who you should be. That question belonged to the old version of you, the one that still believed identity was chosen by approval. Now you ask a different question. What effect do I create when I enter a space? You begin to understand that power is not intention. Power is consequence. Most people live inside reaction loops. They respond to tone. They mirror emotion. They escalate unconsciously. You don't. You recognize escalation as loss of control. You recognize explanation as weakness. You recognize emotional urgency as exposure. So you slow down. You let others reveal urgency while you remain measured. You let them overshare while you retain opacity. You let them seek closure while you deny it. Not out of cruelty, out of structure. This is where most fail to follow you, because restraint feels unnatural to those addicted to expression. You no longer chase resolution. You let ambiguity do the work. Ambiguity creates imbalance. Imbalance creates leverage. People fear what they cannot read. They project onto silence. They fill gaps with their own insecurity. You don't correct them. You let them misinterpret. You let them assume. You let them build false models of you. Every incorrect assumption is an advantage. This is the discipline few can sustain. Because silence invites misunderstanding, and misunderstanding requires patience. But you've learned something fundamental. Clarity is not always power. Timing is. You stop reacting in real time. You delay responses. You pause decisions. You observe outcomes before committing intent. This creates a strange effect. Others begin to orbit you. They see cues. They wait for signals. Not because you demanded authority, but because uncertainty destabilizes hierarchy. You are no longer part of the emotional economy. You don't trade reassurance for compliance. You don't trade affection for loyalty. You trade nothing. And that makes you expensive. You begin to see how often people give themselves away. A raised voice, a rushed message, an unnecessary explanation. You see desperation where others see confidence. You see fear where others see aggression. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. This is when you stop taking things personally. Disrespect is no longer an insult, it's a data point. Manipulation is no longer offensive, it's diagnostic. Betrayal is no longer shocking, it's predictable. You adjust accordingly. You don't confront betrayal. You outgrow it. You don't expose manipulation. You remove access. You don't demand accountability. You withdraw relevance. This is where your presence becomes heavier than your actions. People feel your absence before they understand why it matters. They replay conversations. They search for mistakes. They wonder when the shift occurred. You never explain. Explanation would cheapen the lesson. You understand now. Power that must be clarified is already weakening. You move differently through relationships, not with suspicion, with discernment. You don't rush intimacy. You don't reward familiarity. You don't confuse proximity with trust. Access becomes selective. Attention becomes scarce. And scarcity changes value. Those who once felt equal now feel evaluated. Those who once felt dominant now feel uncertain. You haven't changed behavior. You've changed position. You stopped standing inside the system. You stepped above it. This is where the mind becomes dangerous, not because it attacks, but because it no longer reacts on command. You are no longer pulled into emotional traps. You are no longer baited by provocation. You are no longer rushed by urgency at dissenters. Time bends toward you. Others hurry. You wait. Others explain. You observe. Others chase closure. You let tension remain unresolved. And unresolved tension is power. At this stage, people begin to describe you differently, not openly, quietly. They say you're hard to read, hard to reach, different. They can't articulate why being around you feels destabilizing. Only that it does, because your calm no longer reassures. It dominates, not aggressively, not theatrically, but structurally. You've learned what most never will. That dominance does not come from force, but from emotional non-participation. You don't fight for position. You let others exhaust themselves competing. You don't seek validation. You let others reveal need. You don't threaten. You outlast. This is no longer intelligence as a trait. It is intelligence as posture. And once adopted, it cannot be reversed. You cannot return to navit. You cannot unsee patterns. You cannot unknow leverage. You are no longer becoming this person. You are this person, and the world will adjust accordingly. Slowly, reluctantly, without ever fully understanding why. Because the most effective form of power does not announce itself. It simply reshapes outcomes, and by the time anyone realizes who moved the pieces, the board has already changed. And now, this is where the path narrows. There is no applause waiting here. No validation. No moment where the world acknowledges what you've become. That's the price. Because the higher this form of intelligence rises, the quieter its existence becomes. You will not be celebrated for this. You will be misunderstood. You will be underestimated. And that is precisely the point. From this moment on, you must accept something difficult. You cannot explain yourself without losing power. You cannot reveal depth without dissolving mystery. You cannot seek connection without re-entering the game you escaped. So you don't. You let people misunderstand you. You let them doubt you. You let them think you are passive, distracted, and important. Because underestimation is the most reliable camouflage. You now understand the final law of dark intelligence. Those who need to be seen are controlled. Those who can remain unseen, control. You stop correcting narratives about you. You stop defending your intentions. You stop proving your value. You let outcomes speak, and outcomes are mercilessly honest. Some people will drift away, not because you pushed them, but because they no longer recognize the version of you that fed their needs. Others will grow uneasy. Your calm will feel like judgment. Your silence will feel like distance. Your presence will feel like evaluation. They will sense they are no longer in control, and they will resent you for it. Let them, because this is the final transformation. You are no longer shaped by the environment. You shape the environment by refusing to react to it. You don't dominate conversations, you end them. You don't chase loyalty, you make access conditional. You don't demand respect. You remove yourself from spaces that don't offer it. And slowly, inevitably, the world reorganizes around your standards. Not because you forced it, but because nothing adjusts faster than people faced with irrelevance. This is the moment you fully understand what Machiavelli implied but never stated outright. The greatest power is not fear, not love, but the ability to withdraw without loss. When your absence costs nothing to you and everything to them, you have won. You don't need revenge. Time handles that. You don't need closure. Silence delivers it. You don't need recognition. Your position speaks louder than any title ever could. This is not cruelty. This is precision. This is not ego. This is autonomy. You are no longer trying to be understood. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You have exited the marketplace entirely. And from that position, everything looks different. Conversations slow down around you. Manipulation collapses. Games lose meaning because you are no longer playing. You are observing and choosing, quietly, deliberately, without witnesses. And if this resonated, if something in you recognized itself in these words, then understand this. You didn't learn this today. You remembered it. This intelligence was always there. It simply required silence to surface. Welcome to the version of you that does not chase power, because power now follows, and no one will ever be able to prove it.